Queensland, Dick Johnson, underway. This is the heavyweight of the race, the Big Falcon. Oh, the Queenslander puts the wheel out as he goes round Hell Corner. Enormous horsepower under the bonnet there. Giant strides up Mountain Straight. Well done. And Dick Johnson.
Dick represents to me perseverance, commitment, and a person who has, you know, maybe it hasn't been as easy for him as it might have been, but by geez, hung in there well.
Well, Dick Johnson's actually he's a great bloke, and that's the most important thing out of it.
To me, I mean, he's the guy that I used to look at when I was a kid. You know, dreaming about being a race driver and getting up those early mornings, about 6 in the morning, to watch the start of the great Bathurst race.
First of all, there's probably no real easy way you can actually say this, but at the end of this season, I've decided that it's about time that I stop driving. It's probably a tough decision, but I think it's one that I think in the long run is the best. We've also signed Paul Radicic, and I know very, very well that he will do an extremely good job, although he may cause a little bit of carnage along the way, but that's the nature of V8 supercars. I just really want to do one final year for the fans.
It's going to be really sad. I think Bathurst will be a really sad day for me, but it's just the way it goes, so we just have to play it as it comes.
I reckon it was Dick Johnson, the racing driver, from the day I sat my bum in the first set of 4 wheels.
The only reason to go swimming, you'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go, no problem at all. But I didn't know about this until the girls just sort of squawked one day. And they said, well, Richard drove the car this morning. I said, what? She said, Richard drove the car, but he couldn't see over the wheel.
Well, we did some weird things in those days. We used to go down there and make our own patterns down at the foundry, and then cast up our own wheels, and because they're all cast iron. And this is probably where some of the car control came from, because these cast iron wheels on bitumen, you know, had about as much grip as like a dog on lino, you know. My interest was always with anything that was mechanical. Like I used to do a lot of lawn mowing and stuff like that, but being the absolute petrol head to mow the grass, I had to take the muffler off the mower.
The old man got a new cylinder mower once, Qualcast Royal Blade, like it was his pride and joy. He had it for about a week and a half.
When I got home, I nearly passed out on the back lounge, backyard, spread out on the cement. The only thing that was standing up of the super duper lawnmower was the chassis.
She gets home, here's the full-cast royal blade in a million pieces all over the driveway, and she just went off a tree. And she said, just put it all in the box and I'll try and explain it to your father when he gets home. So she went inside to start dinner, and about sort of an hour and a bit later, the old full-cast royal blade went past mowing the grass.
And you know what? We sold that to somebody, and the man, after years, wasn't it, we sold it, and the chap said, you know, he said, that was a marvellous mower. He said, it's never stopped since.
I just always wanted to drive, no matter what, whether it would be a billy cart or I never wanted to do anything else but drive. My dad took me to a couple of races, and that was where I decided that was me, that was where it was all going to happen, and that was the old Strathpine circuit at Strathpine, just outside of Brisbane.
Well, there was quite an upheaval about that. Bob wouldn't sign, and I didn't want to. I thought, oh no, I'm not going to sign his life away. And then I thought, well, he might be much better off on a track where he's got to do as he's told, but instead of running around the streets, screeching and carrying on around the streets. So I signed his papers, and I thought, oh God, what have I done? I signed his life away. But that was the only reason.
Probably did both.
Bob wouldn't sign it. Bob wouldn't do it. Bob didn't want him to do motor racing.
So you go and see your mother. Yeah, so you go and see Mum. Oh, well, you go and see your father. Okay, it's okay. Well, the FJ was basically just a road car, and it was my way of being able to get into motorsport. Probably the cheapest, fastest car you could have driven at that particular time, because it was something that I could work on myself and hot up myself. It was just had a pretty worn out old engine when I first got it, but I worked on it and rebuilt the engine and borrowed the carburetors and things like that, and only ever raced a road going FJ once or twice, because I ran out of money after the first meeting, but I managed to win a race at the first meeting, which was pretty pleasing. After the FJ, I thought I'd have to step up into something bigger and better, and so my next road car was an EH, and it was an old country travelling salesman's vehicle, so when I got it, it was full of sheep dung and plenty of dust and stuff like that. But we painted it all up and sort of built an engine for it, and it was good. But the weakest part, naturally, was the gearbox. They were always having a bit of gearbox problem. You'd blow a gearbox at a meeting, and because I'd never had any money to have a spare gearbox, so you just put a bit of a plea over the PA, and some poor guy would turn up with his E8, so you'd pluck the gearbox out of that and stick it in, finish the races for that particular meeting, and then put his gearbox back in and send him on his merry way, and he was real happy. So, but that was the joys of motorsport in those days.
Dick was sort of this young hotshot, started to make a name for himself back in the early 70s.
We actually raced the first Tirana anywhere. It was a GTR, which I'd put together. I put a bit of a sponsorship deal together with Eagers, who were the Holden dealers then. We'd struck a bit of a deal with Shell, who were virtually our sponsorship arrangements at that point in time, and then they started up these individual Shell teams, state teams, and it was the first real sponsorship deal I had. Alan Moffat said to me in 1971, "Sonny," he said, "you ought to keep going because you could probably get somewhere one day." Yeah, well, surprise, surprise. For many, many years, that's all I ever had stuck into me was Holdens, because my dad was
with Holdens for years, but when it comes time when you get asked to drive something that's not going to cost you anything, and after spending so much money for so many years of my own money trying to get somewhere, and then somebody all of a sudden says, well, here, drive my car, quite frankly, I think your allegiance to any particular brand fade very quickly.
And I suppose it just made a lot of sense that he would look at his career and say, look, you know, this is just not happening. I'm going to race Fords. And from the moment he started racing Fords, things started to change for Dick Johnson.
By this time I was asked to drive Brian Burt Falcon, and which was a sports sedan at that point in time. This thing, it was boy, she was a real hot rod, this one. And it was a good thing, I think, because, okay, I wasn't that well known in southern states. People knew of me, but that was about it. And I tried for a long time to force my way into the Holden camps, but it never really happened. So I thought, well, I'll try this one, see how we go, and it was a very fruitful relationship.
Dick Johnson to me is a laconic Queenslander and probably one of the most recognised faces in Australian motorsport, certainly in Australian touring cars, has been for a long while.
Dick Johnson to me is a combination of a sportsman and now obviously a businessman.
Play it straight, okay? Just introduce him. Okay?
Yes.
Right.
Roll sound. Mark it.
1, take 3.
And action.
Shell proudly presents motor racing legend Dick Johnson, who's going to tell you all about Shell motor oil and engine protection.
In all the years that I've been using Shell XMO, I'm Dick Johnson.
I'm Barry Sheen.
And here's...
You mean Annie? And here's what then?
And here's... Well, you're supposed to neck. Go on.
What?
Dick's involvement with Shell is an interesting one.
If you think Dick Johnson's been under pressure out there today, just imagine the sort of pressure his engine oil's been under. But that's where Shell's technology really counts. Isn't that right, Dick?
You're not wrong, Barry. Great little drop this, but it's got to be good. It's got Shell on. Oh, come on, guys. You're going to be kidding.
I first became involved with Dick back in the very early 60s at Lakeside in Queensland with Shell, where I was paying him lap money for his early races as we provided him with free fuel, and that was a massive investment in motor racing drivers in that early to mid 60s. And that association with Dick has continued right until today.
I can remember one famous occasion, it must have been about 82. Dick was driving around Bathurst having a lot of problems with the car, and our pride and joy at Ford, of course, and he said, you know, this thing is a dog, somebody ought to tie it to a stake and shoot it. Well, you can imagine what we were all feeling at Ford. This is what the company is built on, and this is what we live off, and Dick's calling it a dog. But he had a nice way of saying it, and it always came across very positively. And I think that's one of the big pluses with Dick. Wherever he was and whatever he was doing, the cameras and the press were always looking for a quote, and that, of course, is what a company is in business for. They want to be exposed, and in that sense, Dick gave absolutely great value for money.
I've never seen a man so prepared to sit for so long and sign autographs and do some of the fairly difficult things that are asked of Dick as a sponsor. Nothing is too much trouble.
Dick Johnson, you know Shell?
Well, Dick Johnson's been really an icon of touring car racing, I suppose. Really mid to late 70s, come 80s to 90s. So I think he's sort of held up the Ford banner for those years. Done a sensational job. He's been an icon to a lot of fans. He's been a great supporter and ambassador to motorsport, and he really is the era of the Peter Brock, Dick Johnson.
I used to like watching Richard and what's his name?
It's Peter Brock.
Brocky, because I think they were the two fair people. They used to go bumper to bumper and side by side and not touch. They were good, and I didn't care who won there. It was just a jolly good. The best man must win.
I might say too that he was very, very fair. I mean, Dick might have had his dramas with some other drivers at different times, but as far as we were concerned, we always, I think we were always pretty fair with each other. We never actually hung each other out to dry. It was always hard, fast, committed, professional stuff, but never dirty.
He would be, without a doubt, the cleanest driver you could ever drive against. It was always a very fair competition.
If you beat Dick Johnson, you know that you're in for a pretty fair day sort of effort, and you could rest assured on Sunday night. You could say, hey, job well done.
It was a good balance, because he was a Holden man and I was the Ford man, and it was basically what the sport needed. It needed a couple of people to sort of kick-start it.
Brock, 7 times winner and the acclaimed King of the Mountain, acts like royalty. He's popular without being pompous, proficient without being petty. Peter Brock describes Johnson as an easygoing ochre type, and Johnson doesn't disagree.
I don't really try to portray to be someone that I'm really not. I just do my own thing in my own time, and if nobody likes it, well, that's just too bad.
When it came to a guy who could actually do it, he was as good as they came. And on his day, Dick, at a track where he felt like he had the support, he was on song, he had the car working to his liking and that sort of thing, he was just absolutely terrific.
Exit there, we'll see whether Johnson's going to pull out of the draft and go for it. Looks like there was some fuel bleeding out of the back of the Johnson car as Dick now pulls to the left-hand side of the road, makes a run down the outside of Peter Brock. Has he got more straight line speed? They're side by side down Conrod Straight, heading beneath our overhead camera. Johnson puts his nose in front. Brock back to second, needs to...
And Bathurst is the place where you can have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Bathurst is without a doubt the most exhilarating, certainly one of the most difficult and the most challenging racetrack.
This is quite unique. This business, wherever you go in this country, they'll always say, yeah, but Bathurst, I saw Dickie Johnson do this, or I saw Brocky do that. And it's a very powerful thing.
This is Headicam headlight camera in Peter Brock's mobile BMW. I don't think we can get you any closer to the road at Mount Panorama.
Like the first time I ever went to Bathurst to do a Bathurst race, I'll never forget, like driving down the straight for the first time, like flat out and reaching 160 odd mile an hour.
That's terrifying.
White knuckles, I can tell you.
There's nowhere else in the world like it. I don't think you could ever build another Bathurst. It's just got so much character about it, and the way it's developed over the years that I've been driving there has certainly been for the better, and it's just a fantastic facility. '80 was, I suppose, the turning point of my career as far as becoming a full-time professional race car driver. Well, the XD was, when I first saw it racing for the first time in 1980, I sat down in front of the TV and watched the telecast from Symonds Plains in Tasmania. Now, these things have got to be half alright. And I knew what they had done with the rules. They'd allowed all the parts from the previous cars, the two-doors, to be transferred into these models. And I think that gave the Ford a bit of an advantage in a few ways. Even though it was a heavier motor car, it still had a bigger engine. And I thought, well, gee, you know, there's a chance here, if we do this right, we could sort of start to win races. And so I discussed it with my wife, and we stuck everything we had into putting this deal together. And it was a very successful motor car. It went out there and really showed the way. And it had been a long time since Ford had really been at the forefront. Probably 1977 would have been the last time when Moffat had the 1-2 at Bathurst. And since then, you know, there was a fair sort of a drought, and the Ford fans were really itching to have someone up there, and I just happened to be the lucky one that was there at the time.
Like a lot of people, my first memory of Dick is actually when he hit the rock in 1980 at Bathurst. But I saw this incredible sort of emotional public event unfold, and that was the beginning of the Dick Johnson legend.
As I remember it, he was leading the race comfortably, and then I can only assume it was a GM spectator rolled a rock on the track, and Dick hit the famous rock.
Well, I suppose you could experience going from the highest high, like here we were leading the greatest race of all time, something we'd never even come close to before, to going to the absolute depths of depression. Like, it's pretty hard to explain, actually. Just tore everybody guts out.
I can honestly say that I will never ever race at Bathurst again until such time as they have a 20-foot high wire fence. The entire spectator areas are completely wired off from the track, because that is just so dangerous. I just couldn't believe my bloody eyes with these galoots up there that just throw boulders. Like, it was enormous.
Has anything like that ever happened in racing before?
Never, because, you know, this was our big shot. We had stuck every single bulb into this.
Dick, the switchboards at all the 7 stations across Australia are jammed of people who are so upset about what has happened. And they, believe it or not, ringing and just genuinely pledging money to help you. Now, this has happened in the last half hour. Everyone knows what has happened to you. We want you to understand that everyone admires what you've done so far in your qualifying efforts yesterday and also this morning in leading the race, and we'll keep you informed. I know the viewers across Australia are absolutely shattered by what has happened, the same as you are shattered. We all feel the same. Probably not a motor racing supporter who threw that, probably some idiot that just came in to cause a disturbance. So take time out, we'll keep you informed what happens, Dick.
Thank you very much, Mike.
I think Dick was really affected by it in the sense that he found that there were a great number of battlers out there that identified with him and that contributed their own money. And I don't think until then he really realised how emotionally involved people get in motorsport. He always felt that, but it was the fans that probably surprised him.
And Edsel saw it on TV and called and said, I think we ought to support it.
So every dollar that goes to the team from viewers of Channel 7 who send something along to you, care of ATN Channel 7 in Sydney, that money will be matched dollar for dollar by Edsel Ford on behalf of the Ford Motor Company.
Well, Mike, that's to me is unbelievable, because I don't know exactly what to say, because something like this has never happened to me before.
And I thought at the time, my God, what a risk. If Dick ends up with a whole heap of money, we're going to give him the whole marketing budget for Ford Motor Company.
But I would sincerely like to thank all those people and Edsel Ford for his true support, because I know that with our car, the Ford Falcon, the way it was more than capable of winning this race and doing it easy, because believe me, the car was superb, and I owe just so much to those boys who have put so much time into it. Thank you very much, Mike.
It was obviously a very good investment, because the following year, in '81, Dick went back and won.
But to win Bathurst that year would not have given us the same amount of exposure as what it did with the Rock.
And I think it would be a happy day for all our viewers throughout Queensland with Dick Johnson, the man from Prudential.
We built this new car with the funds that had been donated to us by all these people. And I'll never forget the first race. It was in Tasmania at Simmons Plains. And we turned up with this new car, and it was the first touring car championship win I'd ever had. Final round of the Australian Touring Car Championship in 1981, and we're in the last round of the championship. There's one point the difference between Brock and himself going into the final round.
He's probably referring to a race at Lakeside where it came down to the wire.
It was a real buzz, because it was a wheel-to-wheel duel for the entire race, from the start, the time the flag dropped, to the time the checkered flag came out.
I think Dick probably got the start, and I just hung onto his bumper bar. And try as I might, I couldn't get by.
And fortunately we came out on top and we won the championship, so that was a real good feeling.
It was one of those things where it was a turning point in Dick's life. It was a point where all of a sudden, I suppose, he had the self-confidence and self-belief that he could do it, and he deserved to be up the front flying the Ford flag. He was well and truly the guy that was out there representing the hopes of the Blue Oval Brigade, and that race was one of those turning points, one of those hallmark races that I can remember having a couple like that in my life too.
Off for the 81 Hardy 1000. That is Dick Johnson of Queensland, who leads from Kevin Button going into the first turn, and just look at that wall of cars, all trying to find a way around that corner. 60 starters as they go through the turn. Let's make sure it is an incident-free first corner.
Johnny Harvey's made a great start, slipped through inside of Bobby Morris and is up in 4th place behind
the brake duel. Whoa! Not much between them. There was almost a touch.
Bartlett's over the strip on the inside.
Boy, Dick Johnson wants to lead this in a hurry, and Brock says, let's make it 3 wide and have a real race of it.
Brock takes the inside run. Oh, Johnson's lost out in this battle. Bartlett maintains the lead. Brock is through to second.
Okay, Brock is now going to put the pressure on. I think Brock wants to get up there in front and run. Okay, oh, dearie me, Brock, I think has got problems, has he? He's pulled to the outside, and Bartlett, Brock is, I think, in trouble. Yes, he's been passed by Kevin Bartlett. Goes back into the race lead. Johnson is in second place.
Bobby Morris third.
Peter Brock comes into the pit area, and certainly an enormous traffic jam. We've had a horrendous crash at the top of the mountain. By the look of it, Bobby Morrison, number 7 is around sideways. 57 is there, one of the Recar team cars. We have an absolute blocked track at the top of the mountain.
Damage at all.
There's the view from Alan Grice's car. He's there, car 44. He's just stopped. He's not in damage, but there are a number of cars. Bob Morris's car is there. Bob Morris going so hard trying to get up the lead in second place.
The track is completely blocked. A replay of it for you.
Well, Christine Cole is involved. She was very early there. You can see Christine on the left. Bob Morris came along. He spun there, the car going backwards. Christine was involved first with another car. There are cars on the other side. Alan Brown. The track is complete.
Motor cars, so I can only assume that they've all safely got out.
With the decision on the fate of the race from the Australian Racing Drivers Club, Ivan Stibbard.
And the regulations say that after 60% of the distance has been covered, when the red flag is used, the race must be declared. We cannot have a restart.
Well, that means that Dick Johnson is the winner under those conditions?
Yes, he has.
You wouldn't believe the amount of the feeling of relief after we'd won, firstly the Touring Car Championship and then Bathurst. Well, without the fans, you haven't got the sport, really, without the fans in any sport. And they'd stand shoulder to shoulder along the hill here and over the back through the S's and up on top of Qantas Hill there. It was always good to see that many people here. It sort of motivated you, I think.
Dick believes he owes the public a lot. He was the little battler who really at that point saw his career going down the gurgler, but he was bailed out by a large number of Australians who sent small donations which enabled him to rekindle his effort and go out the following year and win the race. Now, for the balance of his career, he felt indebted to those people. I tried to look after those people that, with autographs and things like that, and I still do, because to me, that's a fairly enjoyable thing. If the kids can actually get some enjoyment out of what you do, and you can be a role model for them, and the right sort of role model, that gives me a lot of pleasure.
The fans are important. A lot of fans, since they've heard of his retirement, have just, I've had people ringing up in tears.
He's just great with the fans, and he always makes time for them, and no matter what sort of people they are, he relates to them.
I wouldn't be standing here today without them, because they're the people that made me.
Well, Dick Johnson's certainly a name that's been in my head for nearly as long as I've been racing, and Dick's actually, whatever you see on TV, that actually is Dick. No pretensions, Dick. Only one face to Dick, and it's the one we either know personally, and it's the same one as we know from the TV.
The green flag, the green car, and the man from Queensland, Dick Johnson, underway.
This is the heavyweight of the race, the Big Falcon. Queenslander, puts the wheel out as he goes round Hell Corner. Enormous horsepower under the bonnet there. Giant strides up Mountain Straight.
Heading up to GTX Bend. Just listen to the 351 work. To the right-hander. The climb to the top of Mount Panorama. As Queensland's Dick Johnson goes after pole position.
Big new wheels on the Falcon, sits on the road so much better. A ton of power on the ground.
And listen to the cheers of the crowd across the top of the mountain as one of Australian motorsport's most popular drivers guns the big V8.
Oh, everybody's hero, Dick Johnson. Listen to the cheers. Across the top of the mountain in 1:15.8. If he keeps that up, I hate to think what the final lap time is.
Oh, he's hit the fence and he's gone off the track into a tree.
When you do qualifying laps, you're really driving 11 tenths, and you're trying to get the utmost out of the car. Whether the car's wanting to give it to you or not is another thing. And then came Forest Elbow, which is a corner on that racetrack which naturally creates a bit of understeer. At the end of the fence was this big bolster of tyres right at the end of the wall. And when it just snagged the front wheel, it broke the steering arm off. And when the car got back down on the ground, you know, I still had my boot into it because I was still, this is it, we're still going to make this. And next minute it landed on the wheel, it wasn't hooked up to the steering wheel, and it took off into the scrub. And it was about then, well, geez, I could be in a bit of trouble here. And I remember knocking a couple of trees down and that. And once I got out of the car, I don't really remember much more. Even though Brock gave me a lift back to the pits, and I don't even remember that. Maybe that's not a bad thing.
The carnage was incredible. This car was an absolute wreck. And I think that if Dick didn't think there was some sort of almighty power there that controlled life on this planet before then, I think after then he'd sit back and say, phew, my number wasn't up today, that's for sure. It was amazing.
Hey, Dick Johnson fans are the most loyal in Australia. Well, here's a demonstration. We're in the last minutes of Saturday night, and look at the crowd behind me on this cold Saturday. What are they watching? Well, they're watching an effort which, if it succeeds, will be one of the miracles of Mount Panorama. Dick Johnson's crew are trying to rebuild car 9 into car 17. Let me now talk to the man in charge of preparation, George Shepherd. Can you do it, George?
Oh, we'll give it a big shot, Evan.
How many hours work in all?
To do what we're doing, right the way up to the start line, I reckon. Yeah.
What are the hardest things?
Well, the hardest thing is that you just you're trying to do so many things in such a small area with so many people, I suppose. But you're taking a motor car and we're trying to introduce into it all the development that we've found in our car over a whole year, in Dick's car, into a car that's a year old and hasn't had any development since.
It's now around midnight, it's getting colder, and Dick Johnson has turned up. Dick, you must be moved by all this, the fans out there, the fans in here.
Evan, that's Bathurst, I think, and I think that's the dedication that we have in all the guys that work for us. They're just such a great bunch of guys.
Are they going to finish?
Mate, they'll work until they drop. That's how they go. They'll finish the car in some sort of order, and hopefully it'll be good enough to do the job tomorrow.
Are you going to bed?
Oh, we'll get to bed sooner or later.
You're not going to have the chance to drive this car before the flag drops. What sort of chance does that give you?
Well, we'll just hope that the guys get everything, you know, in the right shape when they put it in the car, because you only get one shot, and they know what it's like getting one shot, so I'm sure that they'll do the right thing.
Across the top of Mount Panorama, the fans wait to see what sort of a shot Dick Johnson can give it.
And there it is, you're not going to believe it. Overnight, car number 17. It's a new car, it's not the one crashed yesterday. You wouldn't know the difference. Dick Johnson, and a huge roar goes up from the crowd here at Mount Panorama. Just look at the rival crews, all waving to Dick Johnson, and a tremendous atmosphere here at Mount Panorama. As Johnson takes his place in the field, let's have a look at the cars that will start from positions 41 to 58 from Steve Rain. And here he is, and just look at the marshals around the circuit and the spectators up on top of the mountain giving him such a tremendous cheer. This will be a corner that Dick might treat just a little bit gingerly today. This is where he had the problem yesterday, hit those tyres, the back of the car got into the wall, but Dick Johnson has made the starting grid for the 1983 James Hardy 1000. And that's the only practice he's going to be able to get in the car before the start of the race today. And when Johnson pulled out onto the racetrack, he got an absolute hero's reception as he came onto the circuit and took up the run to the top of the mountain. I think everyone across Australia, and certainly all our Queensland viewers watching today, our telecast of the James Hardy, are pleased to see this man in the field for the 1983 race. He's coming up now behind the cars. We'll probably get an idea now of just how far back the field goes to position number 58.
I don't think he did too good the next day, but at least he flew the flag. And you know, there's a lot of teams, a lot of people around these days who they'll drop the ball. When the things aren't going their way and they say, oh no, the car's not right, everything else, just let's not go out there and make mugs of ourselves. I've never gone along with that way of thinking, and I'm sure Dick hasn't either. You get out there and you give it your best shot, come what may. Rain, hail or shine, you're going to get out there and use whatever you can to get out there and deliver the goods. Dick did that, and 10 points to him.
Big turn halfway down. And this is where the Group C cars used to really get cracking down here. But we've got time for a cup of tea in one of these.
Our controlling body decided that Group A was the way to go. We need an international formula. I had no option if I was to stay with Ford, because we knew further down the track in a couple of years that we were going to end up with the Sierra. So I needed something that was going to tide us over for a couple of years, and the only Ford running in Group A at that particular time, other than the Mercure, which I felt was out of our price range, was the Mustang, because we were very familiar with that type of engine and very similar sort of suspension, etc. So went to Germany and with Ross Palmer, and we purchased 2 Mustangs from the people who were running them over there in Germany.
Have a bit of trouble here. There was a bank on the right-hand side that used to trick a lot of people up. Since they've taken it away, a few people are finding themselves going through there a little bit quicker than they used to. And round the eastern loop and down the hill. Now we'll give you a lap of Lakeside from the driver's seat and explain a little bit about the circuit itself. The main straight is not that long. Come across the start-finish line through a ripper corner. It's a left-hand kink, flat out, into about 200, on the brakes, hard on the brakes, back to 3rd gear. And this corner continues and is the same radius as the eastern loop. Out of there, the car gets a little bit taily, up into 4th gear, and pull 5th for a flat-out run down under the bridge, which is really bouncing the car around and pulls the steering wheel almost out of your hand. Hard on the brakes for Hungary. Left-hander up the hill. Get your boot into it really early. Hard onto the brakes. For Motorcraft, round Motorcraft Hill. The car gets taily out of here again. Up the 4th gear, the right-hander onto the straight, flat out. Use a bit of the dirt if you can. Onto the straight, and that's Lakeside Raceway, one of the most picturesque and best circuits in Australia.
The car went pretty good until you got to having to go up and down the hills. Coming down the hill it wasn't quite as bad, but going up it used to suffer badly. Other than that, it was a very nice handling motor car, used to stop really good, and it was a nice easy car to drive.
ready. The flagman just about ready for the start of the 1985 Great Race. They're racing, and Walkinshaw gets a blinder, but so too does Johnson, and Johnson will split them, and so does Grice. Taking on the Jaguars, Walkinshaw made a blinder, but Allen missed the start completely. They head to the first turn, where Walkinshaw from Dick Johnson, they all...
Up two by Robbie Francevic, who's slotted into third place in front of Alan Grice, and there you can see race cam through the front window of Dick Johnson's Mustang. On their way up towards the top of Mount Panorama, through Wilco Cutting. Really putting the boot in up here. The Jaguars, the pair of them, you can see powering away up front. This is where they've got the legs.
Up to get now closer to the run to Robbie Francevic. Johnson has had the go by. We'll see who wins this one under brakes. Down on the inside, Dick's going to have a go, is he? To the left-hander. So Jim Richards takes Johnson.
And John Goss has slipped by Francevic, so it's Jaguar 1-2 again on the track at the moment. Look at this, Johnson on Mountain Straight, puts the boot in. Close enough to have a chat. Dick gives him the thumbs up and a big smile and says, "Okay, pal, your turn."
But he's got the inside run to the next corner, so Dick loses out on that one.
I've got you covered, Dick. Dick lets him go.
Dick Johnson has some problems here with the number 17 car blowing smoke.
Jelly, I'll have to come in.
Might be an oil cooler.
It appears to be coming out from the front left-hand side there.
Dick, any idea at this stage what's wrong?
Yeah, it split another damn oil cooler by the look of it.
It's a problem you had yesterday.
Well, obviously, from these speed bumps here.
The initials FORD have been carried by Queensland's Dick Johnson for many, many years here in Australia. But for 1986, poor Dickie is feeling the pinch with this car. But 1987 will bring the Sierra to the Dick Johnson camp, and he's got two cars ready for the first race.
Anyone who went with one of the current Sierras would be stupid, because the basic motor car is not even similar to what the Cosworth will be. It's a completely different engine, it's completely different suspension, different pickup points, the body's even different. So what those guys are going to have to do is dig a hole and bury it and start again, and they've got to empty out their truck and fill it up with spare parts again, because it's all different. You know, I'd rather do that with the current car that I have rather than doing it 3 times in 1 year.
And when you get the delivery of your two Sierras from England, how long will it take to put together the car that you hope will be a world beater in 87?
Well, hopefully it'll take about 3 or 4 months, and bearing in mind that the first one will be, there'll be a fair bit of a learning curve with that motor car, but by the time the second and third and whatever comes after that comes along, I think it'll be a lot easier.
Hang in there for today. I guess it wouldn't be too happy being in the middle of the pack.
No, it's not much fun down there. You tend to get knocked around a little, but I suppose Boris Becker couldn't win Wimbledon with a ping pong bat either, could he?
1987 came and it was time to try and upgrade again. So I put this deal together, and we went and presented it to the shell company. They came into it, and so we bought 2 Sierras or 2 body shells and proceeded to build 2 new cars. But when we got into the bigger turbos, boy, that's when you really saw the improvement. And we got a handle on it, obviously, quicker than anyone else. And hence we had 2 or 3 brilliant years.
Are they getting some speed out of these things? Ross Stone came aboard the Shell team this year. Instigated a new suspension and engine development program. These cars really have been the highlight of the Ford Sierras in the Touring Car Championship. Johnson swings in hard on the brakes, maximum braking. He tries to squeeze every ounce of performance out of this car.
He's done a fabulous job. Tommy Smith and the boys at Shell be happy about this lap that Dick Johnson is cutting at Mount Panorama. This could be the leader of the pack shortly. As Johnson comes down to the final corner at the end of Subaru Straight, the checkered flag is out, and Johnson takes the Shell Sierra across the line.
Very smooth, very precise.
2:12.89. There's no fox like an old fox, Dick.
Well, the greyer the hairs, I think the faster we go.
Bathurst, biggest race of the year. 1987 was the World Touring Car Championship, which they made it a round of at Bathurst. And I thought, well, you know, these guys coming out here, we've got all these Europeans with all the factory backing and the big bucks, the full 10 yards. And they came out here and they made us look stupid. And I thought, boy, I feel ashamed to be Australian, you know. And they caught us, you know, wrong-footed because, you know, when they came out here, they brought their own rules with them, they brought everything. And we had to then conform to the way they wanted things done because this was a World Championship, big deal. So I thought to myself, boy, if I ever get the chance, I'd like to really go and stick it to those guys. So we sort of slowly but surely got our act together, and when the time was right and we found a sponsor to do it, we thought we'll go to England and run the TT, which is a race that had been running at Silverstone for years and years and years.
And this was rather interesting because Dick had always said he built the fastest Sierras in the world. Well, he really had the chance to prove it.
Went over there, qualified on pole by about 2.5 seconds, which really made them stand up and look. And then once we got in the race and took off, we just creamed them. And only to have a water pump failure. But other than that, they wouldn't have seen which way we went. And that really made them get up and look and say, hey, you know, these guys aren't as stupid as we thought they were. And it was a good feeling.
With main interest in the battle for line honours between the new and specially built Ford Falcon GTHOs and the car that won convincingly last year, the Holden Monaro GTS. Ford won in '67, so today's race is something of a decider.
The Ford and Holden battle in Australia it's like our culture, it's our battle. It's like Carlton versus Collingwood, it's like you know, Manly versus Parramatta. It's got that real feel about it. And certainly in recent times it's come back and it's probably stronger and there's more of a deeper feeling and a genuine culture about it than there has been, I think, in history.
Now the 1 minute siren has gone and all is ready for a start with 2 Falcons and a Holden on pole position.
And people really sort of got beside whatever brand because that was what they were driving on the road, and they saw that as their car winning races.
Ford fans crazy with excitement. Here they come, but Grice is going to fight back on the inside of Colin Bond. Bond continues on, he's going very hard down the outside. Some team tactics here from Moffat and Colin Bond, effectively letting Bond through for the lead, and that was a very good manoeuvre. Bond will now lead, and the fans down here in pit straight are going to go wild with enthusiasm, and up go the arms as Colin Bond leads Alan Moffat and Alan Grice further back then on the...
I think the magic is that the two car makers are very well known and obviously well known to all Australians, and to have a contest you've got to have two sides. You've got to have a left and a right, or a good and a bad, or whatever. Now people choose whichever they wish to be, the good or the bad, and it varies. But without that visible contest and the visible so-called sides, it wouldn't be as strong as it is now, and that's what it's all about.
You see now how the Falcon is certainly catching up to Bond, so there's no doubt who's got the legs. Alan Moffat was saying he was building the car for down the straight. Now he may be out-braked, but let's see, it's side by side. Bond is going a little later. He'll take a very difficult line on the outside. Moffat is not going to let him through. In fact, he closes up again because he knows he's got the line and he's going to shoulder Colin Bond out of it if he possibly can. And now it's all acceleration up to the line. This is only third lap and already it is neck and neck, side by side. Imagine the cheer from the crowd. It is Bond who's got the better gear.
It comes down to the Holden-Ford rivalry. Really, you know, if each team says, okay, we've got a 50-50 chance of winning, let's get out there and have a go. This is the things that I think sporting rivalries are made on, because no one's quite too sure. You pick your mark, you might say, I want Ford to win, I want Dickie Johnson to win, go Dickie, yeah.
Well, Holden versus Ford goes back a lot of years. It goes back to the really the early 60s, the 70s, the 80s. It's really still going today. I think it's the backbone of Australian touring car racing. It's naturally very well supported by the public.
And tries to zip down the inside, but look at Scape. He's just got the brakes on. Oh, big lock up there.
Not too many more of those. He's done a few, not as bad as that, but it's not very often we see.
I mean, they're the two great Aussie cars, and that's what people pay to see. That's what they want to see. They want to see who's going to come out on top. Everyone's sort of, you got your Ford fans, you got your Holden fans. It's a great atmosphere when the two get together.
There was a tremendous rivalry, and And even today, when you walk up the mountain in Bathurst, if you're a Ford person wearing Ford clothing, there's no way known that you'd walk through a Holden area. It sort of makes it's a no-no. And the same happens with Holden guys. If they walk through a Ford area, it's quite amusing.
Skate gets on smartly. Line astern actually off the line. Rocky got away brilliantly. So too did Crompton down the inside.
Starting off from 4th position. As Seaton holds the line, he'll lead him through. Scape on the inside, Crompton on the outside. First the Holden racing team.
He just doesn't seem to have the finesse that he needs on that brake pedal this opening few laps.
He did such a fabulous job in the first heat, not even allowing 6 mistakes in the second.
Give him a little handicap.
Position he didn't gain anything. But this is where the race is. John Bowers coming up, right behind Mark Scape. We'll go down to Andy in a second to get an update. Bowers says, hey, I'm ready to
two guys, yeah. When you think of the speed that Bowers put on to catch Scape, they're both doing 30 seconds. I would hazard a guess the same
with the top partners. Peter Brock is now still leading from Alan's race. Then the 2 Ford Falcons, then followed back by Johnny. Glenn Seaton looking for 2 out of 2 here today. Neil Crompton, outstanding from the Coke Commodore. Next is Brocky. Mark Scape is the next one. Dick's a very tough competitor. I've been racing against Dick now for in excess of 10 years, and we've had some great battles over that time.
He's like on the track. He's very fair to race against with, even though I might add up had a few blues with him. And actually I've punted him off a few times too, but he's given back just as good as he's got.
He's been a great competitor, as I said, a great ambassador to the motorsport and to Ford.
We had some real good side-to-side racing at high speed, so it's a matter of trusting someone when you're racing, and when you're going around a corner at 250 kilometres an hour, you want to trust the guy beside you, and I wouldn't do it with a lot of people. With Dick I would, because I know he wouldn't sort of send me off into the fence, so there's quite a bit of respect there.
I think that Dick was the sort of person that would do a lot of work, hands-on work within a team. He wouldn't just be standing back directing traffic. He'd be in there, shirt sleeves rolled up, in there doing engine development and fiddling around with the engineering side of things, with gearboxes and diffs and chassis, and then getting out there and driving it. So he lived and dreamed it.
As a competitor, he's very fierce. I mean, he's a very good competitor, very, very tough.
DJ's one of those people that whenever you're racing against him, you know you're in for a battle.
But the cameras then were these big things, and it was quite hilarious, really, to have this great big camera sitting beside you.
Dickie Johnson carrying race cam yet again. It's become part of your life, Dick. You've got to pay attention. I was saying race cam really is a part of your life these days.
Yeah, not bad either, mate.
You know, a lot of people keep asking us whether or not having to talk and concentrate at the same time. Do your lap times drop off?
No, not really. Maybe a tenth of a second or so. Depends where it is and what I'm trying to think of. Because sometimes the dribble I put in my head doesn't fall out at the right time.
Lost a few laps, but you're still there, boy.
Yeah. I tell you what, mate, we've just broken a blooming axle, would you believe? Mate, it never rains, it bloody well pours.
Is the strategy going to work?
Oh, God only knows, mate. Got more pops in a lollipop shop at the moment, but it's just a gamble, mate. We're just going to see how it pans out in the end.
Everything in your favour's against you.
Oh, mate, I don't believe this. I think I should have stayed in bed.
What'll I do, call you an RMA for you or something, or what?
Oh, you might as well run him and talk to me, mate. I've got nothing else to do.
He did have an accident once when he was on race cam, though it wasn't actually of his making. What had happened, he was at Bathurst and he was in the midst of talking to the commentators.
And I was going through the fastest part of the racetrack, which is through Celtic's Chase. way down the straight, unbeknownst to me, the rear wing had snapped in the middle.
He was leading at the time, and you could hear a pin drop in the commentary booth because they thought they'd caused it.
The car just took off like out of control at nearly 300 kilometres an hour. And I thought, oh boy, this could be serious, you know.
Hey, are you lonely?
You got to be joking.
Oh, I just thought you might have been busy for a while.
Even in that circumstance, at close to 300 kilometres an hour, he managed not to swear. We were all very impressed with that. The American drivers couldn't grasp the concept of talking during a race at all. Dick didn't have a problem with it because he'd been doing it in Australia for a couple of years.
Despite being down on horsepower, he was giving the Americans a fright. As Australia's king of race cam chat, Johnson was given the privilege of carrying a camera for the American audience. It was entertaining, to say the least.
So he's a veteran road racer from Australia. What he drives down in there is something called a Ford Sierra. It's the sort of like our Mercury Mercure. He's a Ford factory driver down there, and is certainly trying to show his wares today. He is one of the drivers who people have been so impressed with down there as he's coming out toward.
Oh, he spins, Jerry.
He loops around in turn 11.
The cars aren't that difficult to drive if you get the setup right. But when you don't get the setup right, they are the most evil piece of cast iron you've ever put your backside in. They are shocking.
So the American commentators loved him, or at least they did, right up until the time that he went off the road in an accident, and he did swear on that occasion, and I think they lost their enthusiasm for the live-to-air stuff at that point.
It is, and here's how it sounded.
I fired up in there probably a little bit quick, and it just sort of slipped off the road a little bit, like it's as slippery as a butcher's block up here. There's more gunk on the road than there is on the kitchen table.
Dick, you had a great run. How did your day go prior to this point?
Well, I'm just waiting for these turkeys to lift me off here. All I want to do is get back and have a go.
We like your accent too. Welcome to Winston Cup.
The best time would be 1989 when we won start to finish. That was pretty exciting. We led every single lap of the race.
There's one guy that can hear you at the other end of this, and it happens to be John Bowe. Have you got anything you'd like to say to him?
Good on you, pal. You've done a great job, and it's great to see to drive you there because you're certainly welcome in our team as long as you like.
Everything just went, really well. I'm very, very pleased, especially on third place here.
John Bowe, what a day for you. Two-time Gold Star champion, a former Australian sports car champion, and now the winner of the James Hardie 1000.
11 years with John was an extremely good experience. Like we had a good relationship, and probably a good friendship over those 11 years. He joined our team in 1988, the first year that we really started to get the Sierras cranking, and he had an awful lot of success with them too. We won a lot of races together. It was just a good relationship, and to have those sort of things in motorsport is fairly difficult because a lot of people, it's a very fickle business, and you really got to earn somebody's trust, and you've got to trust somebody before you can have a relationship that goes that long. And that's all over now, but that's past tense. I look to the future because I'm a great believer in one of the old sayings, mate, the only thing you get from looking backwards is a sore neck. The lowest point would have had to have been 1992. We were actually up against the might of the GTR Nissans with their four-wheel drive and an awesome amount of power, and the poor old Sierra was struggling a bit. But we kept the fight up to them all day and just kept nibbling at their heels and nibbling at their heels. We made the right decision at the right times to put the right tyres on for the conditions that prevailed.
It is filthy outside. Here's Johnson in. Keep in mind, Dick said he's got the headlights covered up with shell decals.
Oh, no, Jimmy Richards has hit the wall.
Well, Richard, of course, stuck on slicks, and
that car is not going anywhere else but the pits this afternoon. The rain is now hitting the commentary booth so hard, you can hear it.
I wouldn't expect we might see a red flag. I can see them stopping this race.
They must stop the race.
This is it. This will be the end. The red flag will be out before we finish our next sentence, I would say.
The lead Nissan crashed, as did a number of other cars. And we passed the crashed car and went round to the finish line, and they put the red flag out.
Dick Johnson, relatively unscathed, arm raised. Now, I don't know whether his arm is raised in what he thinks might be victory, but the indications that we've been given is that the number one Nissan will still be declared the race winner.
Yes, but unfortunately it was run under international rules, and they take the finishing order in as it was 2 laps previously to when the flag went out, which of course put the Nissan back in front.
If we came second, well, we came second, but in my mind we won.
The disappointment was so great that it went on for bloody weeks. And, it's something you just don't forget. I don't sort of begrudge the guys that won it, that's the rules. But
Dick said it's the only time he's lost the race to a parked car.
That's life. When the Group A days were there, people watched, and then they started to fade away because one car would be totally dominant. And they didn't like to see that. The people don't want to see that. They want to see a fair, good, tough competition. And that's what they're getting now. Where the Holden and the Falcon are very similar is they are similar in engine size. They're very similar types of engines. They both produce about exactly the same amount of power. They're similar size motor cars. So there's a lot of synergy between the two cars. And that makes it a lot easier to keep the parity there.
Championship from Lakeside in Queensland. We're set to go. We are away. Who gets the good jump? Longhurst got away all right, but it's John Mount who got the jump. Ingle tried to force the way up the outside. They all get away cleanly for the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Jason breaks on the outside now, and yes, he manages to get through.
Looked like it was Dick Johnson who got the jump there as they come through the carousel. So it is Dickie. The local crowd are going to go crazy.
Oh boy, he's pumped up, isn't he? Contact there of the Winds Commodores. Just getting back onto the line as they sweep through here under the Dunlop Bridge for this very fast part of the track. 220 kilometres an hour as they break hard for Hungry Corner. So it's the Shell duo. Dick Johnson in the brand new Shell 17 Ford making its debut this weekend in Lakeside. John Bowden,
the pole man in behind him, and Tony Longhurst in the Castrol Ford.
Well, it's been a long, long time between drinks since we've seen Dick at the front of this V8 supercar field. He started from pole here back in '95, and he would be loving this. The new car is worth everything they've paid for it. Have a look at it go.
Tell you what's happening though, the gap you've got to watch is Russell Ingall. He's in third position. He's brought it down to 2.6 seconds. The gap between him and the Shell duo leading the race. So Ingall on an absolute charge. A 51.68 last time around. He's clipped a few tenths out of the Shell team, so he could be right on the back between Russell Ingall and John Bowe.
That's on board with DJ now.
Dick Johnson now is hitting this traffic. Goes up the inside of the Wings Commodore. Try and pick his way through quickly here. This car's travelling in excess of 200 kilometres an hour through this very narrow part of the track. Danny Osborne in the colour scheme Falcon gives him racing room. Johnson down the outside. Bowe goes with him. Up through Hungry Corner. They've got the trademark Falcon of Paul Wheel ahead of them. And now Russell Ingall's going to have to contend with this too. This could be a critical move in the race.
Well, here's an interesting duo. Probably the least experienced and the most experienced together. Paul Wheel, just 18 years of age. You need to be out of the way for. He's coming on.
Danny Osborne spun, trying to keep away, but didn't know where that trade link forward was going. Goodness me, now Johnson.
It's touched.
Johnson, you can see there where he made contact with the Falcon.
So Bowe's now in front with 3 laps to go. Dick Johnson, the damage on the front left of the Shell Helix Ford there, and that has allowed Russell Ingall to catch right up. So we've got a 3-car race right now. Ingall's going to do everything in his power to try and get past one last lap.
Actually, just looking at that slight bit of damage on the front of Bowe's car, it could have been Bowe who hit Johnson up the back because he was so close behind him when Dick hit Paul Wheel. There you can see that little battle damage on Bowe's car. So they've regathered themselves after that incident. Fortunately, only with light damage, could have been disastrous. Russell Ingall really close now behind Johnson. Last time up through the Eastern Loop.
Coming up on Rod Nash there, one of the newcomers to the V8 supercar ranks. He gets right out of the way really quickly. They come down off the Eastern Loop for the final time. It is going to be a Shell Ford 1-2. Congratulations to that team who won the round here last year. Starts today in great fashion. Ingall pulls out of the slipstream, but he won't get
People are going to be a lot more settled down. There's a lot of people having.
Well, right now we're currently trying to develop this new car, which we haven't had enough time with yet, but I feel it's got the potential of being very much a race-winning motor car. It's all about team effort, and the guy with the best team and the best act is the guy that will win. And that goes from the drivers right through the entire team, right down to the car. Everything has got to be spot on because it's so competitive.
Between himself and Garth Tander, that battle for second position between Tander and Loud still raging.
We're talking about Dick Johnson's farewell year. His first testimonial dinner will be before the sensational Adelaide 500 on Thursday, the 8th of April. There's a contact number on your screen there. Get onto that number if you would like to go. It's going to be a fabulous night as Dick battles with Bob Thorne, one of the V8 supercar newcomers. And there will be testimonial dinners in every state around the country as we bid farewell to, well, 5 times Australian touring car champ and an Australian motorsport icon, Dick Johnson.
I tell you what, it really shows up how competitive this thing is. Just listen, 6 is Bright, 7th is Eagle, 8th is Lewis, 9th.
To drive a truck, it's like trying to manoeuvre the Queen Mary through Burnett Lane. Everything happens in slow motion, and it bounces and bucks and kicks and there are obviously certain things you can do, but to make them a little bit like a race car, but you're never going to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, are you? But 94 was pretty special too.
It was a day that the team absolutely dominated. Dick was just on phenomenal form that day, and really we had the car right. The whole thing came together so well. Late in the day though, we had a challenge from someone who'd caught up some distance with a pace car, and at one stage actually dropped to second with only a matter of 8 laps to go, something like that, after 7 hours of racing, and we all standing there couldn't believe that we could possibly lose this race after dominating all day.
It was just nail-biting, just sitting there in the pits, because Bowie was in the car, and just sitting in the pits and waiting for the end of the race to come. And when he got past, I said, God damn, I got on the radio. And I said to him, how old are you? I said, you're not going to let this little kid who's just got out of kindergarten beat you, eh? Because sometimes you've got to motivate people.
With Dick, what you see is actually what you get. The public Dick Johnson is like the private Dick Johnson. The only thing that is perhaps different is that Dick, the private Dick Johnson, is a bit more relaxed and can be even funnier than the public Dick Johnson.
Dick Johnson is a name or a person that I've grown up with, coming from New Zealand. I mean, Dick is, as I was starting my career, was a well-known figure in motorsport, and a guy that I always looked up to, and at some stage always wanted to emulate perhaps what he'd done.
Now for the 1999 season, well, we've got a lot of exciting things happening this year. Paul has joined the team, and I think that's an enormous plus. We've had a long association with John Bow, who's now gone on to bigger and better things. We're really excited about the prospects of this new season this year, with so many changes and so many different people within our organisation. And I know damn well for me it'll be very much a memorable final season.
This year is all about Dick farewelling his fans.
Well, I think it's going to be the most important year of my career. It's going to be a very busy year, but I'm just going to make sure that I enjoy it immensely, because there's an awful lot of people that have supported me over the years, and really this is for them. So I can say, thanks for what you've done for me.
It's been 2.5 years in the planning, and we're focused the whole year on Dick doing things to say farewell to his fans, to thank them personally. So he's touring the country. This is why we've called it the Farewell Tour.
The all-new Falcon AU is the best car we've ever built.
These are awesome motor cars. They look good, they sound good, and they're fast. And that's basically what the Australian people want to see.
I have to say, personally, from my own point of view, I couldn't do it like that, because when I retired from bike racing, I didn't know. I couldn't go into a year knowing that that was going to be my last year, you know, because I would have thought that you couldn't try as hard. You know, when I retired from racing, I got to the end of the year and thought, well, I retired from racing. But different strokes for different folks.
Well, I think Jilly will have, she'll have dual thoughts really. She'll have a sigh of relief because she probably won't have to worry as much. But with Stephen around, she's still got to worry for a lot of years yet. So, but she's a bit sad too, I think, in a lot of ways. At the end of the day, you know, it had to happen, and now's as good a time as any. Life has it so long.
It's been our whole life, so I can't take any of that away from him, and I'm sure it will continue to be our life. Yeah, it's going to be really sad. I think Bathurst will be a really sad day for me, but it's just the way it goes, so we'll just have to play it as it comes. Each race will be a nice race.
Oh, I think I'll be busier with motor racing than I have been in the past. I've always thought that, you know, our operation that we have at our workshops, our new facility up there at Stapleton, that we could run anything up to about 4 or 5 cars out of there quite comfortably, of different teams. Well, the reason that we built the complex is mainly because, well, I felt for the development of our particular category, which is V8 supercars, and motor racing in general, that the public had to be more involved in what we were doing. And to enable the public to have a look and see that motor racing's not about dirt floors and dirty old overalls. The place is very, very clean, and they get more of an idea of what happens, because probably one of the most commonly asked questions at any race meeting, people say to me, well, what do you do during the week? Well, we do an awful lot during the week, and I just thought we'd give them the opportunity of seeing just exactly what we do.
Dick's one of those fellows that basically puts people in place and lets them get on with the job. He doesn't interfere. As far as managing himself, he's one of these people that is very well organised. His attention to detail is next to none.
He is really good. I mean, he's calls a spade if you ask him that you need something. If he needs to come down and sign an autograph for somebody, just give him a call. He'll be there, not a problem.
And team effort is something which is pretty, pretty special in this game. Unless you sort of have all the team working together and working together properly, I don't think you'll get results. It's quite a clinical operation, and that's basically how most of the top teams work. And you have to, because if you don't, you won't succeed.
Anybody that can survive and prosper at the top of any sport in any country for 25 years has got to be true blue. I mean, he has been the top of the tree for that long, and that's something that you don't see in golf or tennis or boxing or anything, you know.
Oh, he's a true blue Australian, absolutely. He's got, I mean, Tony Cochran from Avesco talks about it being the heartland sport, and Dick's certainly part of that.
Dick does come across as a true blue Aussie battler because that's really what he is, and what you see on television and what you see in the Shell commercials, that's Dick.
Oh, for sure he's a true blue Australian. He's not a battler though. His boat's, you know, I think 90 metres long. But I have to say though, Dick was a battler. And Dick, what Dick's made for himself, he has made for himself. And I admire any bloke who can make success, and especially through hard work, and Dick's one of those guys.
Maybe he's a Queenslander first and an Australian second, but that's the nature of Queenslanders.
Just a love of driving cars. All I want to do is drive cars and try and drive them better than anyone else.
Yeah, Dick, relax with it. There's an old saying, as one door closes, another door opens. And you'll realise after a while that there's more to life than having to roar around this track, you know, involved with this drama, this brawl with other drivers. You can still love to drive a racing car fast.
Just enjoy yourself. Don't look back, look ahead. And there's still a lot of good in you. And there's still a lot of good things you can do.
Thanks for all the memories, and never forget us.
Dad, I think you really didn't need to retire at this point in your career, but you know, I still think that you can do as well as anyone out there and still beat anybody out there, including myself on the tracks.
You've been all a sponsor could possibly want, Dick, in your motor racing career, and we look forward to continuing that association as you remain very much the head of Dick Johnson Racing.
Dick, it's a shame to see you go, but you've worked so hard for what you've achieved. Just make the most of whatever you choose to do for the rest of your life.
Dick, go off and enjoy the fruits that you've earned, and I hope I never see you back on the track again.
Good luck to you, mate.